A huge thank you to everyone for helping me hit 1,000 subscribers so quickly, as well as Dakota Broski for signing up for the Patreon and choosing to support the channel. You're all fantastic, and I hope you enjoy this video as well. You know, when I thought up a video where I quickly described each Planeswalker, I thought to myself, this is gonna be a nice, fun, easy video, especially after the big three last ones. There's gotta be, 25, maybe 30 Planeswalkers? That's not so bad, right? Did you know that there are 86 unique Planeswalkers? That is one for every date that I've been on this year, plus or minus 86. And that's only talking about the ones that actually got cards. We're not mentioning the unluckiest or any of the characters who were depicted before they got their spark or after they lost it. Just the real playable Planeswalkers cards. But hey, I got nothing going on tonight, so let's briefly talk about every single Planeswalker in Magic the Gathering. That said, you can see how long this video is. It's going to be a big project, so if you could show some support by hitting the like button, subscribing for more content, and maybe even consider checking out my Patreon if you're feeling generous, then that would be a monumental help in getting this channel going. But enough with the YouTube stuff, let's start things off by talking about Lion Dad. Ajani Goldmane is a white and green aligned Leonin Auramancer from Naya, though occasionally he can also be associated with red mana as well. At first, Ajani was all about the rage that he felt at the expense of his brother's death. However, after spending some time with Elspeth, he found new ways to channel himself. He has appeared in 14 different Planeswalkers cards, and tends to be associated with life gain, rallying or buff effects, tokens, and protection. Aminato is a very young Planeswalker who has the ability to foresee and manipulate fate, to the point where her spark ignited because she knew it eventually would. She's aligned with white, black, and blue, and her abilities in-game allow her to swap the top card of your deck for one in hand, flicker a permanent, and sway the destiny of the game by shifting control of all non-land permanents to either the left or right. Angrath is a black and red aligned Minotaur who battles with fiery iron chains. He has appeared in 3 cards, working with creature generation or manipulation, and direct damage. Arlen Cord, a werewolf from Innistrad, is tied to red and green, and fitting to being a werewolf, her playstyle involves creating a pack and attacking quickly, or in a more literal sense, creating tokens and giving them stats or haste. She appears on 3 cards, however 2 versions of her can transform as well, becoming much more aggressive in the process. Ashiok is a black and blue Planeswalker with very little known about them other than their ability to manipulate dreams and fear. As a being who is essentially a living nightmare, she feeds on the minds of other players, which is why all 5 of their cards have abilities involving milling, creating nightmares, and exiling. Basriket is a white-aligned sand mage from Amonkhet who followed the god Oketra before they were killed. Oketra was the deity who stood for order and cooperation, and as such, Basri's abilities tend to involve strengthening or creating groups. He has 2 forms so far, each with an ability that designates a leader by making them stronger, training an army by triggering for all attackers, and finally, 1 big board buffing ability to round him out. B.O.B. Bevy of Beetles is an un-Planeswalker. That is to say, someone from an unset. Rather than being one specific entity like just about every other Planeswalker, B.O.B. is, well, a bevy of Beebles. These are tiny homunculi that researchers would study at the Tolarian Academy. Fitting to that, on entering the battlefield, B.O.B. makes 4 1/1 Beebles, and their loyalty is equal to the number of Beebles that you control. This can be increased to attack your opponent, or you can sacrifice one to research it and increase your knowledge, being represented by drawing a card. Calyx is aligned with white and green. He is from Nyx and acts as an agent for the Theran god of destiny, Klothys. Calyx is the first on the list to be a former Planeswalker. He gained his spark in order to pursue Elspeth, however he lost it in the desparkening after New Phyrexia's invasion of the multiverse. Calyx has 1 card, and it's all about enchantments and using them to create advantage. Chandra Nalaar is probably the most iconic red Planeswalker, and she is our first member of the Gatewatch, the group of Planeswalkers formed to battle the Eldrazi Titans. Chandra has more cards than any other Planeswalker in the game, with 19 of them, although she actually has 20 if you want to include her Heroes of the Realm card. With so many different playable forms, she has a bunch of very unique abilities and identities, but the general theme is fire, and typically presenting that through creating mana or burn damage. Comet is yet another un-Planeswalker, and he is, in fact, a stellar pup. Now, Comet isn't a dog person, he isn't really special in any way, shape, or form, he is quite literally just a dog. And to make things even stranger, he only has one ability. However, this ability is dictated by a dice roll, allowing for 4 separate opportunities. He can create squirrels to chase, dig up cards from the graveyard, and even bite your opponent. Commodore Guff is aligned with blue, red, and white. He's a librarian who lives on Dominaria and has a collection of every book ever written, including stories about the destiny of the multiverse. He's one of the 9 Titans who fought against Phyrexia with Urza, despite knowing that Phyrexia would win. That said, he was talked into changing the book to rewrite fate, and ultimately caused Phyrexia to lose. Fitting to a member who was part of and who saved the 9 Titans, all of Guff's abilities on his card revolve around having and strengthening other Planeswalkers. Dak Faden is a red and blue thief who can divine the history of anything that he touches, as well as copying enchantments that are attached to those items. He originally comes from the plane of Fiora, however he was killed when his spark was harvested by Nico Bolas's Eternals. Fitting to his abilities, Dak's cards allow you to cycle, gain control of artifacts, and steal permanents when you target them with spells. Dakon Darkblade is a white, blue, and black planeswalker from Dominaria. He was a blacksmith who was approached by Dihada to create the Black Blade. He forged it over 10 years, heating it and then cooling it by killing a slave with it and having the weapon drink that slave's soul. When he finished, he tested the blade in battle and grew stronger with each life that he took, spawning the horrifying tale of Dakon Blackblade. When Dihada returned, she would use the blade to steal Dakon's soul through his shadow, but left the man himself alive to wander across Dominaria. His card, fittingly called Dakon Shadowslayer, gains loyalty equal to the number of lands that you control. Think of it as you forging the blade over a longer period of time with each turn that passes. He can surveil, exile creatures, and play an artifact from the hand or grave, most likely wanting to target the Black Blade itself. Daretti is a goblin planeswalker who is aligned with red and black mana. He was born on Fiora and became an artificer who would create his inventions using scraps. Despite general discrimination against goblins, Daretti was still able to become a successful professor thanks to his genius. We've seen him in 2 different cards now, and as you might expect, he is very artifact focused, allowing you to create them, sacrifice them, and use their scraps to either build something new or to produce weapons that destroy your opponent's permanents. Davriel Kane is a blue and black planeswalker that steals the spells from people's minds, and while this offers a massive wealth of power, he also has a contract with a World Soul entity that gives him unlimited power in exchange for surrendering control. This being uses him to try and approach other entities like itself. He can steal the memories of other players by forcing them to discard. Then, once the opponent has nothing left and he is set up, he turns the spells that he stole against the owner by dealing damage to them each turn. Domri Raid is a green and red planeswalker from Ravnica. He was orphaned and abandoned in a small bit of Ravnica's wild as a child, and grew up idolizing the Gruul. However, he was too weak to join them, and so he formed his own clan of feral beasts, and his skills handling them would eventually evolve into his own brand of magic. He would use this to drive out a wild herd of rage beasts, and in doing so he finally proved his worth to the Gruul. As such, each of Domri's 4 cards sees him searching for, buffing, and creating creatures. Dovin Bond is a blue and white planeswalker from Kaladesh. He's a Videlkin Minister of Inspection who strives for perfection in all things, with an innate talent for magic which allows him to find the flaws in any system or machine. He is famous for incrementally improving things in Kaladesh while making use of a Thopter spy network to keep his eye on the entirety of the nation. Dovin has 4 planeswalker cards that revolve around creating time for development, weakening or stunning cards, healing or drawing, preventing damage, and creating Thopters, anything to buy time to reach your goal. Eliwick Tumblestrum is our first non-Magic the Gathering planeswalker. That is to say that she comes from Dungeons & Dragons rather than being from Magic's lore or an unset. In her own world, she used the Wish spell to get a lucky draw from the deck of many things. With this, she became the greatest bard in the multiverse. But in Magic, she is a green planeswalker that allows you to venture into the dungeon, grab creatures from the top of your deck, and rewards you for each unique dungeon that you've completed. Elminster is another D&D tie-in, this time using white and blue. He's known as the Sage of Shadowdale and is one of Faerun's most powerful wizards. As such, his Planeswalker card makes your instants and sorceries cheaper for each card that you have scryed. He can also turn the top card of your deck into a bunch of fairy dragons, which is just kind of fun. Elspeth Tyrell is a white-aligned planeswalker from Capenna. She's a warrior who believes everyone should be free. She is once held prisoner by the Phyrexians and holds an intense hatred against them, which can cloud her judgment. Elspeth specializes in magic that builds community and fortification. She can build a mighty army, protect it, and bolster its forces. She has 7 Planeswalker cards, with most revolving around creating tokens, buffing them up, gaining life, and occasionally recursion or destruction effects. Estrid is a blue, white, and green planeswalker who uses enchantments to disguise herself with different masks that grant her strength and skills based on the creature that they represent. This allows her to have just about any ability that she might need at any given time. As a planeswalker, she can grant enchanted masks that protect whatever they attach to. She can untap those permanents, and she can return enchantments from the grave to the field. Freyalise is a red and green planeswalker that is a half-elf from Dominaria. She was the protector of the Sky Shroud, and generally had very little interest in anything outside of her domain. However, in her final moments, she would choose to sacrifice her own life for the betterment of her plane. Freyalise's planeswalker could almost be considered a representation of green mana. She can create Llanowar elves, destroy artifacts and enchantments, and she can draw cards for each creature you control. In many ways, it is like a forest that can grow and protect itself. Garruk Wildspeaker, the iconic green planeswalker with a specialty in creatures. He tries to live as one with nature, standing as the greatest natural predator as he connects with the beings he kills to gain their strength. Garruk has 8 planeswalker cards, mostly being green and revolving around creating beasts, drawing, and overrunning your opponents. While he was cursed by the Chainveil, he also splashed in black mana and incorporated destruction effects as well. Gaedrone Dihada is an ancient demonic planeswalker who is aligned with all colors except green and specializes in corruption and enslaving magic. All she cares about is gaining power by taking control over other strong beings. This could be existing powerful creatures like the Elder Dragon Chromium, or those who have great potential like Dakon. Dihada has appeared in 2 cards, one that prioritized placing corruption counters on creatures and then taking control of them, and another which focuses on legendary creatures which she can find the potential in. Gideon Jura is a white planeswalker from Theros who was instrumental in the founding of the Gatewatch. He is a soldier and tactician who specializes in magic for protection. He had a strong belief that those with power should protect the weak, something which he proved with his very last breath, opting to sacrifice his own life to save Liliana. Gideon has appeared in 8 Planeswalker cards, focusing on exile, buffing and protecting creatures, and preventing damage. Another non-canon Planeswalker from the D&D universe is the Grandmaster of Flowers, Bahamut. Bahamut is the dragon god of justice who often disguises themselves as a mortal to wander around the world. This leads us to Magic, where he is presented as a white planeswalker in the form of one of his personas, the Grand Master of Flowers. Fitting to this, Bahamut is able to transform back into a giant indestructible dragon once they have built up enough strength. Grist is my own personal nightmare fuel, as a green and black insect planeswalker known as the Hunger Tide. Grist travels from plane to plane looking for places with vast forests and farms, and when she finds them, she summons unimaginably large swarms of local insects that will feed on the land until nothing remains. She has appeared in 2 cards and has abilities like creating insects, milling cards, sacrificing creatures, destroying targets, and becoming more powerful for each creature in your graveyard. In other words, the more that she consumes, the stronger she grows. Huatli is a warrior poet planeswalker from Ixalan who can telepathically communicate with dinosaurs and read their memories. Huatli is a pretty interesting planeswalker in that her color identity has shifted, seemingly forever. Originally, she was white and red, however, after realizing how xenophobic her nation had been, she aimed to change, now embracing white and green instead. Her abilities revolve around the creatures that you control, gaining life or loyalty which increases based on the size of your horde, creating dinosaurs, and while she used to deal damage to limit blockers, now she draws you cards. Jace Beleren, from the plane of Vryn, is by far the most iconic blue planeswalker. He is a mental mage specializing in telepathy, clairvoyance, and illusions, allowing him to manipulate and understand all of those around him. He is only really being limited by his knack for getting amnesia. Jace was the Living Guild Pact, a founding member of the Gatewatch, and has been instrumental in so many other major stories within Magic's lore. And that's probably why he has a whopping 14 cards, with one being probably the most famous planeswalker of all time, Jace the Mind Sculptor. His abilities tend to include drawing, scrying, bouncing creatures, and a whole lot of mill. Oh, and also he went to space as Space Beleren once, but we don't have to talk about that one. Jared Cathalion is our first 5-color planeswalker. Born on Dominaria, Jared is a swordsman who channels magic into his blade as he swings. Most recently, he returned for the second Phyrexian invasion and joined the new coalition. However, currently he is working on freeing his homeland from Dihada. As a mage with access to all 5 colors of mana, all of Jared's planeswalker's abilities revolve around that idea, creating a 5-color Kavu, giving creatures strength based on their color identity, and returning multicolored cards from the grave. Jaya Ballard is a pyromancer from Dominaria who wields red mana through fire and lightning. While her student Chandra used fire hot-headedly, Jaya lives with a clear head and is often considered a master of control. We've seen her as a planeswalker 3 separate times, each demonstrating a different part of her life. First, a more aggressive stage, adding more damage to your red sources. Second, becoming a more talented mage, allowing you to manipulate instants and sorceries by adding mana or casting them from your grave. And finally, as a teacher who creates students with prowess. Jeska is a red planeswalker from Dominaria who is known as the Thrice Reborn because she has lived 3 lives. First as Phage the Untouchable, second as Corona False God, and finally as a planeswalker. Jeska ultimately sacrificed herself to seal a rift over Otaria. As a planeswalker commander, she demonstrates this idea of living multiple times as she becomes more powerful each time she is cast from the command zone. Jiang Yanggu, whose name I probably mispronounced, my bad, is a green planeswalker from Shenmeng. He has the ability to strengthen the creatures of the forest and travels the multiverse with a dog named Mowu. Over his 2 cards, his abilities include being able to summon Mowu and buffing your creatures. Kaito Shizuki is a cybernetic ninja from Kamigawa who is aligned with blue and black mana. He aims to help Kamigawa progress towards becoming a perfect plane through technology. As a ninja, Kaito's 2 planeswalker cards are all about evasion and moving quickly. He can phase out after your turn, create unblockable ninjas, draw cards, and even call creatures from the shadow of your deck. Karn is a silver golem from Dominaria, dubbed the Father of Machines. He has become a planeswalker twice, first receiving a spark from Urza and later from Venser. Karn has near mastery of artifacts, being able to understand any machine that he comes into contact with. While he has access to all 5 colors of mana, all 4 of his planeswalker cards are colorless. He can create power stones and thopters, lock your opponent's artifacts, exile cards, and even bring in cards from outside of the game. Cosmina is a blue and green transformation wizard, turning her enemies into helpless frogs and taking control of people's minds. However, if all else fails, she can always create blades of pressurized air which can slice at her opponents. We've seen her on 2 separate cards, and each has a separate passive ability. One which makes your creatures and planeswalkers harder to target, and another which takes control of other planeswalkers by giving her own abilities to them. Outside of that, she can create creatures, draw cards, and even cast instants and sorceries from your library. Kaya Kasir, the ghost assassin from Tulvada, has a very unique ability. While it's typically impossible to bring another living thing into the Blind Eternities, Kaya is able to enter another person's body as a ghost and have that body planeswalk with her. Kaya acts like she is driven by money, however she does have her own sense of justice, even releasing all of the unfair debt while she was the leader of the Orzhov Syndicate. As someone who fights off ghosts, all 7 of Kaya's cards revolve around exiling, while also having a small focus on discarding and life manipulation. Kiora is a green and blue merfolk planeswalker from Zendikar. She fights fiercely to protect her home and seeks new ways to increase her control over the seas, for example taking the Bident of Thassa from Theros. She has appeared 3 times, and typically has abilities that allow her to draw or untap cards, and often demonstrates the power of the ocean by summoning massive sea creatures. Koth of the Hammer is a red-aligned Volshock planeswalker from Mirrodin who specializes in geomancy. Koth desires to bring peace and harmony, but will gladly bring a mountain down on any who threaten his home. He has been in 2 Planeswalker cards, each really leaning into that moving mountains idea. He can untap them, turn them into living creatures, give mana for each that you control, or use them to produce damage. Liliana Vess is a necromancer from Dominaria, and she is by far the most popular example of a black planeswalker. In general, she views others as stepping stones towards greater power, and this thirst for power even goes as far as to use the Chain Veil despite knowing it corrupts her. While most planeswalkers are no longer immortal, Liliana has made pacts with several demons to remain youthful and in her prime. We've seen her in 12 planeswalker cards, with a ton of different abilities that often revolve around discard, sacrifice, revival, and zombies. Lolth is a black-aligned deity from Dungeons & Dragons. She is a goddess of both drows and spiders. Her planeswalker card becomes stronger with each friendly creature that dies, sacrificing themselves to the cause. She can create spiders, draw cards, and ensures that your opponent will always take at least 8 damage from your creatures. Lord Windgrace is a Panther Warrior planeswalker from Urborg on Dominaria, and he was one of the 9 titans who fought with Urza. He is aligned with black, red, and green mana, and hates all things mechanical after fighting the Phyrexians. When Windgrace died, his spirit returned to his homeland where he continues to watch over it as an avatar. As a planeswalker card, all of his abilities revolve around lands, with an ultimate that creates 6 cat warriors to stand and fight with him to protect the forest. Luca is a planeswalker with the ability to bond with animals and even take on some of their features as they become close. He is a red and green planeswalker from Ikoria who was once a member of an elite military squad that fought against monsters. He appears as 3 different planeswalker cards, first as a member of the Coppercoats and allowing you to summon creatures from the top of your deck, then as a card which could either be Luca or his companion Mila, and finally a completed version who summons corrupted beasts. Minsc is another Dungeons & Dragons tie-in planeswalker. He was a ranger who believed that his partner Boo was actually a miniaturized giant space hamster. To show off this partnership, his red and green planeswalker card creates a Boo token every turn. He can then buff that Boo up and then throw it at his opponents to deal damage. Mordenkainen is a blue planeswalker borrowed from Dungeons & Dragons who created many powerful spells. As a magic card, he allows you to cycle cards, create a dog with stats equal to double your hand size, and remove the limit on your hand size. As your hand represents spells that you can cast, it's pretty fitting for a dude who's responsible for making spells to give you unlimited access to them. Mu Yanling is a hydromancer from Shenmeng who uses blue mana and has the ability to control air elementals. She looks for time magic that might be able to undo the tragedies of her homeland. In her 3 planeswalker cards, we see her controlling wind by removing flying from creatures, bouncing them back to their owner's hands, or creating elementals. However, she has also mastered time enough to give you an extra turn. Nahiri is a core lithomancer from Zendikar and is aligned with white and red. She's considered to be one of the most powerful planeswalkers, but while she was once the hero who bound the Eldrazi Titans, she's become obsessed with revenge, later even becoming completed by Elish Norn. She is the embodiment of White's sense of justice and Red's fury being unleashed upon those who would break their word. She's appeared in 5 planeswalker cards, each using her lithomancy abilities to create and empower equipment, which can be used to aggressively attack any enemy in front of her. Narset is an Ojutai Sculler from Tarkir. She's a planeswalker aligned with blue, white, and red mana with the ability to nullify or amplify magic. She has appeared in 3 planeswalker cards so far and often limits your opponent's abilities to draw or cast spells. She also has skills which can grant mana and allow you to either recast spells or to add damage to your instants and sorceries. Nicol Bolas, the most famous big bad in all of Magic the Gathering, is an ancient elder dragon from Dominaria with access to telepathy, necromancy, and energy manipulation. As a planeswalker, he has access to black, blue, and red mana, and over his 5 cards we can see him with themes like card draw, permanent destruction, exiling, stealing creatures, direct damage, and in some cases even offering a win condition. Nico Aris is a blue and white planeswalker from Theros. He can conjure and manipulate metallic mirror shards that seal any living thing pierced by them inside of a pocket dimension. This can be used for his allies to dodge attacks or to lock enemies away. Nico has an X-cost planeswalker card which creates shards that let you scry or draw. In terms of flavor, he then uses these mirrors to make his allies unblockable. Nissa Ravain is an elf from Zendikar specializing in green mana, though she has dabbled in black and blue once each. Nissa is able to feel and manipulate the plane's ley lines, giving her an innate connection to any land that she visits. At first, Nissa was presented as an elf-typal planeswalker. However, now she is an animist, who is able to animate the land and speak to the soul of Zendikar directly. She has appeared in 11 cards, most of which allowing you to untap lands and turn them into elementals. Obnixilis was a human warlord and the only survivor of a plane that only knew war. However, he was cursed by the Chain Veil and turned into the red and black planeswalking demon that we all know and love. He specializes in anti-life magic, which can weaken enemies, erode matter, and consume the life of others to strengthen himself. His 4 planeswalking cards specialize in creature destruction, card draw, and hitting enemies for 1 or 2 damage each time they draw. Oko is a shape-shifting Fey planeswalker who uses blue and green mana. He specializes in healing, illusions, and mind control magic, and aims to help others find freedom and escape the rule of tyranny. We see Oko in 3 separate planeswalker cards, which have abilities like creating food or copies to feed the hungry or build a rebel army. He also has transformation effects, which can remove tyrants and bolster the less fortunate. Quintorius Khand is a Loxodon mage from Arcavios. As an elephant, he never forgets a spell or tome that he comes across, and has a dedication to historical accuracy in his studies. Quintorius is a red and white planeswalker who benefits from casting cards from exile, which very much is like learning spells from the past rather than from your library or your memory. Ral Zarek is an Izzet guild mage from Ravnica. Ral is a storm mage who controls rain and electrical storms with both blue and red mana. He has appeared in 5 planeswalker cards that strike like lightning, forking damage between targets or chaining it through multiple enemies. He can also use chaotic effects like flipping coins for extra turns. Rowan Kenrith is one half of twin planeswalkers from Eldrazi who uses red mana. She is a spark mage utilizing electrical energy in tandem with her blade to fight alongside her brother. She has had 3 planeswalker cards with abilities like dealing damage that forks between targets, stealing creatures for a turn, forcing opponents to attack, and copying spells. She has also appeared to work with her brother in the Royal Scions planeswalker card. Saheeli Rai is an artificer from Kaladesh with the ability to control metal, which she uses to create artifacts and constructs. She can even turn one metal into another if she wants. Saheeli is a blue and red planeswalker who has appeared in 4 cards, with abilities allowing you to scry, create artifacts or copies of them, and even make other artifacts cheaper to play. Samut is a red and green planeswalker from Amonkhet who has superhuman speed, and using this speed she does everything she can to protect her plane and her people. She has only appeared in 2 cards so far, giving her speed to others by granting haste or double strike. We can also see this demonstrated as she summons creatures and planeswalkers directly from your deck onto the battlefield. Sarkhan Vol is a red, blue, and green planeswalker from Tarkir who can communicate with dragons, though in the past he has worked with black mana as well. Sarkhan craves power and always strives to gain status, something which has led him to work with Ugin and eventually led him to being corrupted by Nicol Bolas and becoming a mindless pawn. Sarkhan has 7 different planeswalker cards, usually dealing with direct damage, mana generation, and summoning dragons. Serra is a white planeswalker with an affinity for angels. She was strong enough to create her own plane, Serra's Realm, and populate that with angels as well. The people of Dominaria founded the Church of Serra to worship her as a goddess. She's only been in a single planeswalker card and has abilities to turn creatures into angels by giving them the power of flight, create angels, and effectively makes you immortal as long as you have a creature on the field. Savitri Skarzam is a blue and black planeswalker who specializes in controlling dragons. Her main magic surrounds summoning and speaking to dragons telepathically, though she can also use hydromancy and cold magic. She only has 1 card so far, putting fear into your opponent's creatures and requiring them to pay life to attack you. She can also search your deck for dragons and destroy all non-dragon creatures on the field. Sorin Markov is a black and white vampire planeswalker from Innistrad. He is a master of blood magic which can drain the life from others. He is the oldest living planeswalker at over 7,000 years old, and he was instrumental in sealing the Eldrazi Titans. Sorin has appeared in 9 cards, with the majority of them focusing on life manipulation, creating vampires or bats, and taking control of players or their creatures. Tamayo is a moonfolk from Kamigawa who can harness green, white, and blue mana. She is a truth seeker and hopes to explore every secret of the multiverse. Her magic revolves around the stories within her scrolls, which each give her unique powers. Tamiyo has appeared as 5 Planeswalker cards, with almost all of them having ultimate abilities that create emblems, and you could almost see these emblems as her scrolls, which each give her those different effects. Outside of that, many of her abilities involve tapping permanents, drawing cards, or recurring instants and sorceries. Tasha, the Witch Queen, is a Dungeons & Dragons tie-in who wrote the, and I'm sorry for this, Demonimicon of Igwulf. This jumble of letters is the title of a book all about demonic lore. She's a planeswalker who uses blue and black mana and grants you a demon every time you cast a spell that you don't own, while also exiling spells from your opponent's graveyard and allowing you to cast those spells at a later time. Teferi Akosa is a time mage from Dominaria who uses white and blue mana. Teferi was the former ruler of the island of Zalfir, opting to phase it out of existence to avoid a cataclysm. However, in its disappearance, he found an overwhelming sense of guilt that he has traveled through time saving people to repent for. Teferi hates violence, and as such, his abilities in all 9 of his cards seek to resolve issues peacefully. Because of that, he focuses on drawing, tapping, returning cards to the deck, protection, and exiling. Teo Varada is a white planeswalking shield mage from Gobekhan. We've seen Teo as a planeswalker twice, each focusing on defensive abilities. Teo can make walls, give you hexproof, draw cards for you and an opponent, and force opponents to attack specific other players. Tevesh Zatz is a black planeswalker from Dominaria who shapeshifted into a twisted, distorted dragon. He is incredibly manipulative, holding a mission to silence life anywhere he goes with magic that focuses on death, destruction, and torture. As a planeswalker, he can summon thralls to do his bidding, sacrifice others to draw cards, and gain control of all other commanders, even ones in the command zone. Tezzeret is a blue and black planeswalker from the Esper Shard of Alara. He's an artificer who reforged himself with a dark steel body and can turn scraps of metal into living constructs that he can freely manipulate. Tezzeret has appeared in 8 cards which untap, sacrifice, empower, and create artifacts, while also having a secondary theme of stealing life from your enemies. The Wanderer is a white planeswalker and the Emperor of Kamigawa. She can absorb any and all kinetic energy and channel it into her sword. Unlike other planeswalkers, her spark was unstable and forced her to travel planes randomly, thus giving her the title of Wanderer. She has appeared in 3 planeswalker cards with abilities that can prevent damage, exile targets, even the odds of the battlefield, summon samurai, and sometimes has flash to demonstrate her sporadic planeswalking. Tybalt is a half-human, half-devil planeswalker from Innistrad who uses red and black mana. Tybalt's magic specializes in pain and despair, being able to instill it in others and then amplify it as he sees fit. He has appeared in 3 planeswalking cards so far, with abilities that can stop opponents from healing, punish opponents for holding cards in their hand, and exile cards before stealing them. These each fitting the themes of despair, physical pain, and emotional pain respectively. Tyvar Kell is a elf planeswalker from Kaldheim who is aligned with green and black mana. Tyvar is all about building up his own legend. He does this through tremendous talent in close combat, but also in his ability to transmute any natural material into another that is nearby. Tyvar has appeared in 2 planeswalker cards which are all about manipulating and augmenting your creatures. He can allow them to act as though they have haste, tap them for mana, untap them, revive them, and even give them keywords like Death Touch. Ugin the Spirit Dragon is an Elder Dragon planeswalker from Dominaria that can turn energy into matter. Ugin is the twin brother of Nicol Bolas and is likewise one of the strongest planeswalkers in existence. He tends to use his powers to create rather than destroy, however his Ghost Flame is capable of incinerating nearly anything in the multiverse. Ugin has appeared as 2 planeswalker cards, each revolving around the theme of colorless cards, exiling, and creation. Urza is a mage from Dominaria and the founder of Tolarian Academy. He has a natural affinity for blue mana, but he does have access to all 5 colors. Urza is a man of obsession, devoting his life to battling the Phyrexians and just a tad of eugenics and genocide. He has appeared in 2 planeswalker cards, one from an unset, and another which can only be created by melding an Urza creature with the Power Stones. Gifted by those stones, he can use 2 planeswalkers' abilities each turn, which gives you access to draw, spell discounts, soldier creation, and exiling opponents' permanents. Most fitting, though, is Urza making himself indestructible before nuking the field. You know, like a crazy person might do. Venser is an artificer from Dominaria who uses white and blue mana. His magic has an emphasis on teleportation, but he also has a passion for creating powerful artifacts. As a planeswalker, he can flicker permanents on your board, make creatures unblockable, and exile permanents each time you cast a spell. Vivian Reed is a green planeswalker from Scala who is known as the Queen of Ghosts. Vivian is able to summon spirit creatures by firing her arc bow. She can make living creatures grow larger, and she aims to put an end to civilization so that the multiverse can return to its natural order. She has appeared in 7 planeswalker cards, with abilities that all focus on summoning creatures, giving keywords, and bumping up creature stats, and sometimes pretty dramatically. Occasionally, she also has a secondary focus on destruction effects. Vraska is the Gorgon assassin guildmaster of the Golgari Swarm on Ravnica. She is a green and black planeswalker who seeks for the equality of the Golgari and to put an end to the Azorius' corrupt sense of order. She has appeared in 7 planeswalker cards and has abilities revolving around card draw, sacrifice, destruction, and, fitting to the assassin title, alternate win conditions or kill setups, either through toxic, setting an opponent to 1 life, or straight up making them lose the game on the spot. Vronos was a blue planeswalker from Innistrad. He had been attacked by werewolves who shredded his face. However, he eventually found himself on Alara, where he learned all about metalworking magic. Using this, he constructed a mask with an Ethereum infix to empower himself. His planeswalker card allows him to phase out other planeswalkers to protect them, force opponents to return permanents to their hand, and transform an artifact into a 9/9 unblockable construct with vigilance and indestructible. Will Kenrith is the twin of Rowan. He is a Cryomancer from Eldraine who uses blue mana to produce ice that can control the flow of battle, thus allowing his sister to land effective strikes. As a planeswalker, he can freeze opponents by reducing their power to 0 and make them fragile enough to be killed in 1 hit. Not useless on his own though, he can also allow you to draw cards and discount your instants and sorceries. Finally, he can transform permanents into elementals or copy spells to close out a fight. Of course, he also appears to work with his sister in the Royal Scions. Ren is a dryad that symbiotically binds with and pilots treefolk. She connects with trees that she hears the song of, and then travels the multiverse with them until they are ready to die, at which point she will bring them back to a location that they wish to meet their end at. She is a planeswalker who has access to green and red mana, which we have seen over 3 different cards, pairing with 6, 7, and Realmbreaker. Ren almost always has abilities which includes land manipulation, creating creatures of some kind, and graveyard recursion. Xenagos is a green and red satyr planeswalker from Theros who has ascended to godhood. He has complete disregard for life and spent much of his early childhood even trying to kill his mother. As a planeswalker, Xenagos creates satyrs to fight for him, generates mana based on the amount of creatures you have, and can play any creature or land from the top 7 cards of your deck. Zariel is a red-aligned Archdevil brought over from Dungeons & Dragons. She was tasked with observing the blood war between demons and devils, but became obsessed with fighting in it herself. Her Planeswalker card gives your creatures haste so that they can enter the fray of battle faster. She can create devils who deal damage after dying in her service, and she can even give you another battle phase to keep the blood war going. And finally, there are cards given as awards, called Heroes of the Realm cards, which are given to WotC's staff to recognize significant impact on their business. Included in these are a few existing characters in new lights, like Chandra, as well as a few new planeswalkers. These include Dungeon Master, who is a white and blue planeswalker based on Dungeons & Dragons. His loyalty comes from a D4+1, he creates skeletons, he rolls a D20 with a chance to either skip your next turn or draw a card, or he can give you an adventuring party, complete with a fighter, a cleric, a rogue, and a wizard. Inzerva, Master of Insight, is a red and blue commander which allows you to draw 2 cards and discard 1. They can scry 2 from every player's deck, and they can make an emblem that forces opponents to play showing their hand while hitting them for 1 damage every time they draw a card. Boyd, the Inverse Sun, is a blue and black planeswalker that mills 3 and then returns cards from different universes to your hand. You can also choose a specific universe and cast a spell from that universe by paying X loyalty. Ursta, Friend to All, is a 5-color planeswalker which creates 5-colored wizards and allows you to cast any tutor spell or win the game when you have 20 wizards. Svega, the Unconventional, is a blue, white, and green planeswalker that gets loyalty each time a land enters your battlefield. So you can then create a 1/1 token for each type of Planeswalker on your field, or summon a copy of an Elspeth, Teferi, Liliana, Chandra, or Garruk Planeswalker. And that is all 86 Planeswalkers covered as briefly as I could possibly do it. This has been a really fun video for me to look into, as I found a bunch of characters I'd love to make full videos discussing, so let me know if there's any that you specifically are interested in or that you want to see get fleshed out in full. If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe. This was a lot more work than I thought it would be, so any support goes a long way. But if you do want to go a little bit further, you can consider checking out my Patreon and helping me make videos like this more possible. With all that being said though, I've been talking for what feels like forever, and I am officially out of mana. So I will see you all next time. Thank you all for watching.